Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Simple Scrapper's 10th anniversary party, day 2. My name is Natalie Schmidt, and I am your host this morning, and I'm happy to take you through scrapbooking larger vacations. I'm hoping to share with you today a few of my tried and tested tips for being a little bit more successful and feeling a little bit less overwhelmed on taking on the project of scrapbooking longer vacations or vacations with more photographs. I want you guys to please feel free to scrap along. Don't worry about taking notes. Honestly, if the replay is not enough for you, I am happy to send over my little speech notes, but you're stuck with my face for most of the presentation with this one too. Looks like, oh wow, there are quite a few of us. I'm just going to put the chat on to make sure that I keep an eye on that too. What does a larger vacation actually mean? Okay, well, I guess that really depends, Penny, on your own definition. For myself, I am capable of taking 2,000 pictures within a 5-day vacation. So it can mean different things to different people. What I'm going to be highlighting today is actually a 7-day holiday with 2 days mainly taken for airplane trips on either side, a compendium vacation of about a dozen trips to Disneyland Paris, taken through a number of years, and then also our mini European vacation, which was a 15-day tour sort of thing. So those are the vacations that I'm going to be showing examples of afterwards. Oh, thank you. I like being compared to Annette Benning. Yay! Well, that just made my week. Thank you so much. I'm just going to get started. So again, it's mainly going to be my face. Can somebody jump in and take yourselves off of mute to remind me about the giveaway, which this time is for a Tracy Reed gift certificate for $10, which is awesome. I wish I could enter that one. I want to make sure that we get it done before I forget about it like last time. Okay. So let me just bring up my PowerPoint here. So I love going on vacation with my family, with my husband. I haven't taken very many trips just myself, usually with at least one girlfriend. I haven't graduated to the lone solo traveler. I'm not quite that brave. Although hubby travels for business quite a bit and can hop onto any plane, train, or automobile and, you know, be comfortable driving on whatever side of the road he's on, I'm not quite there yet. But I would like to share with you today my experiences of scrapping some of my larger vacations with my family. Now, I'm, as well as being an avid photographer and scrapbooker, those are my two huge passions, and one sort of feeds off the other. I really love learning things, which is, I think, another reason why I'm so drawn to the Simple Scrapper membership. That there's always an opportunity for learning new things, challenges, story sparks, different ways of looking at things, different ways of questioning what's working and what's not. So that's really what also sparked this chat for me. Throughout the years, I have actually taken a couple of courses about scrapbooking vacations, just because I have a number of trips that are still on that dreaded to-do list. I have done a number of trip albums, and I'm quite pleased with the products that I've come out with, but some of them have felt very overwhelming and not knowing really where to start once I get home. So I've actually taken an audio course. I've purchased an audio course called the Story-Centered Album, which is the deep dive audio course by Noelle Hyman of the Paperclipping Roundtable fame, and Schmidt. And it's a number of hours of weaving the story. And for me, trips are shorter stories, right? That can have sort of that beginning, middle, and end, and have that sort of coherence throughout. And really the opportunity to apply the principles that these ladies talk about. It's a nice application as a trip. I've more recently purchased Ellie Edwards' Story of Travels class. Now, I must admit, a lot of my Allie classes I've purchased and been very excited about, but I haven't progressed very far within them. So I think I'm on lesson 3 of travel. She has some great ideas of ways to include memorabilia, a way to organize your product and your story. So I do recommend that one. And also I've taken May Flom's vacation class, and that's given me great resources and ways to think about how I want to tell my trip story as well. The biggest lesson that I've learned about vacation scrapbooking is that really your thought process about it and your organization about your trip photos and how you're going to scrapbook it start far before you leave for your trip. That really you have a lot of research and planning to do. Just like Jennifer teaches us, that you sort of try to begin with the end in mind, just like any of our scrapbooks. You can start thinking about your maximum format, your theme, and your scope of your desired product. I know that for some people, photography and which camera you'll use. Will you use your camera phone? Will you use a DSLR? Will you be bringing it with you every day? Is photography really important to you? Are you going to be bringing extra lenses like a macro lens if you're looking at doing a lot of detail up close work on, say, flower blossoms or moss or that sort of thing? Or are you a landscape person and you want to bring along a tripod? Are you going to be doing a lot of night photography? Do you need a flash? That sort of thing. So what I would recommend is that you do some research regarding the sites that you want to see and the activities that you'd like to spotlight. Are you going swimming with dolphins? Are you, going to go and see a volcano erupt? Are you going to have a certain sports game that you want to document? So you can use your online research to see how others have captured these sites and activities, and whether there's a certain location or time of day that you need to be there in order to get the shot that you want. And you'll need to plan your itinerary accordingly. For example, flowers blooming, you might need to be there during a certain season, or it could be as easy as morning glories, and that you just need to be planning to be at that place in the morning versus the afternoon or evening. Now, pardon me, you pronounce this word 2 ways depending on where you are in the world. Either geysers or geysers erupting, volcanoes erupting. I mean, they all have, and they're usually pretty well documented of when those things are going to happen. So you need to check tables. Tides being in or out. Again, there's tables that you can check. Sunrise or sunset. There are apps on phones that you can check just where you need to be when. You can also look up photos to where you're headed, posted by others on TripAdvisor or blogs or whatnot, and determine, do you want to capture that site? And if you do you want to capture it in the same way? I very much love to pick an iconic attraction or site and go and try to capture it from a different angle or a different perspective or the reflection of it. That sort of thing, to make it my own. If I wanted to use someone else's image online, as long as it's royalty and copyright free, I'm actually comfortable in doing that now if I didn't get the shot myself. So think about how you'd like to capture those sorts of sites, but please do ensure your safety. I've heard of some crazy antics of some people, slipping down wet rocks and whatever because they were just trying to get the better picture. Don't do that. Making a packing list of equipment you'll need to bring along. Remember to be reasonable and don't overwhelm yourself. I've been very guilty of this. I strictly shoot with a DSLR. I cannot take a phone photo to save my life. I don't know why. It's the number of years now that I need that, heaviness, that's what I'm used to, sort of thing. I cannot take a picture with my phone to save my life. So I rely upon others to take pictures with their phones, and I take my DSLR. Now, that being said, hubby is very generous with his time and his strength, and a lot of trips, if we're taking a backpack, he's the one who ends up carrying my extra lenses or my flashes or whatever. I will take my camera in my camera bag, but anything sort of extra, if I've requested it, he will take, well, with the snacks and other things, that sort of thing. Keep in mind that when you're going, if you are taking something like a DSLR or something that needs batteries, make sure you bring extras of those. One memory card is never enough for me, but more importantly, memory cards are fallible. There is a potential that, you know, you could have it go corrupt on you during your trip. Bring more than one, and bring one with ample storage for yourself. I like to take a memory card that has enough on it that I don't actually have to remove any of the images during our entire vacation, so that I'm able to keep one copy of my photos on it, and then I will back up at night so that I have a second copy elsewhere as well. The way that I shoot and back up things is that because I have my DSLR, I have an external hard drive and my laptop with me, so that every night I can take the pictures, copy them from my memory card so that there is that second copy. I actually make a third copy because I am that anal about it. So I have one on the laptop, one on the EHD, and then that also permits me that if I'm shooting the next day and heaven forbid I do run out of space on my memory card, I can take those initial ones off because I've got the remaining 2 copies of my pictures. There is no risk of a corrupt hard drive or a corrupt external hard drive or a corrupt memory card risking my losing of my pictures. But it's important to remember that everything these days seems to have its own charger or battery charger. Speaking of batteries, I bring an extra battery along for my camera, my phone and its charger. So whether you back up to a cloud-based storage or an external hard drive or a laptop, it's nice to have that confidence that, you know, a slipped finger wouldn't risk losing your vacation memories. A tripod is something I stopped bringing, except for our one trip to Italy, which was a photography vacation. But tripods have a lot of options. You don't need to have a ginormous like a full tripod. You can have little mini ones. You can have little gorilla ones that actually have bendy arms that you can put around trees or railings or that sort of thing, that are smaller to pack and lighter. Weight can be a significant issue if you're needing to trug this stuff around. And then extra lenses, I like to travel with a zoom lens as my primary lens, just because I like to have a variety of wide angle shots versus telephoto zoom in shots. I will rarely bring along my macro lens, even though I own one. And I don't bring along sort of my more primary lenses that aren't my zooms, that are a single focal length, just because they're a little bit less versatile, and I want to minimize the amount of stuff that I'm bringing along. Before you go, try to make up a shot list. Think of the things that you're going to be doing. Think of the things you're going to be seeing. You know, what sorts of methods of transportation will they have? How are you going to capture the places where you stay? Are you going to include maps? Are you going to have, are you going to scan paper copies of maps that you have? Are you going to go online and do screen captures and print those out and include those? Because I'm a digital scrapper, I usually do screenshots of things, or I do include scans as well, but then I can include them right in my album with my pages. Think of the people that you're going to be traveling with, your traveling party, the people that you're going to be meeting along the way, and you. Don't forget to include you in the pictures. Think before you go about getting a mix of detailed, well, think of scope. So I like to get a mix of shots that are small, medium, large. So small would be the detail, the close-up, shots of hand, shots of detail within ornaments that you see or activities that you're doing. Actions would be considered medium. A group shot people doing something, that sort of thing. And then scenes, setting the stage for your story would be my large sort of shots. And if you have a mix of those, I find that the story that you tell, just with your photos alone, regardless of journaling, is a more rich one that's woven. And then also remember, and this is important for me to remember because I do love taking my photographs, balance time photographing with experiencing the trip, not through your viewfinder. This became especially important during our trip out west in Canada when we were at the Dude Ranch. It wasn't feasible to be taking my big DSLR with us in the saddlebags of the horse. I did it for one day. But I really prioritized, okay, what sort of shots do I want? And it happened to be one of my son's birthdays that day, and that's why the big camera came along that day, so that I could capture his special birthday breakfast on the trail with pancakes and such. But really making sure that you're enjoying your trip for what it is. And then while you're on your trip, journaling and executing the vision. So journaling your experiences each and every day, whether you do it in the morning before you start or the evening after your full day, do it while your memories are fresh. And I am the queen of thinking, oh, I'll remember the horse's name during the entire trip. I do. But once I get home, you know, it sort of gets foggy. And because I haven't scrapbooked that trip yet, as we talked about in my previous chat earlier this morning, that, you know, document now, make later. Do it while your memory is fresh. Take notes of things that you'd like to capture during your future days of your trip if possible, and modify your desired shot list appropriately. Preview your itinerary for the upcoming day, either the night before you go or the morning prior to departure. I would say that if you're planning a pocket page space album, review what aspect ratios and orientations of your photos you're looking to fill that day, and you can shoot those with intention. One of the things that I'm needing to prioritize for projects such as Day in the Life or December Daily, I noticed that a lot of people sort of pre-make their albums, and they have, you know, like, okay, today is going to be Christmas lights or whatever, and they have a photo spot available. I very much shoot with intention to tell the story of my photograph, and I crop in camera so I don't leave myself a lot of latitude for after the picture is taken to crop it into a circle if that's what my sketch needs, or a, you know, a horizontal rectangle. And if the sketch that I want to use, or if the page that's already created for Christmas lights has a vertical rectangle instead, it can be quite frustrating. So if you've chosen that as your style, pocket pages, take notice. And then doing a pocket page album would be nice as well, because then you could journal right onto your cards every day at the end of the day if you wanted to do that and get it done. And then, of course, any special equipment you'll need for that day, whether you're going indoors to, say, a museum or that sort of thing, that you might need your flash.
I just want to break in. You wanted a reminder about the giveaway.
Thank you very much, Penny. Let's do that now then. Excellent. Okay, so it's for a $10 gift certificate. And very much like Henry VIII's second verse is the same as the first. We're going to pick a number with a random generator between 1 and 100, and it is chosen. And if you guys would like to post in the chat box what your number is for the next 30 seconds or so. There are 30 of us right now. Excellent. And if anybody is new to Zoom, the chat box can be accessed if you're looking at I think Penny is on my screen right now, that if you hover over the bottom of her picture, the chat bubble will become, or Alt-H is the shortcut for that, and you can go to the right-hand side. We're still getting numbers in. I'm going to go and get my little scripty-doo. Okay, 10 more seconds for anybody who hasn't gotten their number in, but it looks like almost everybody is in here. Okay. So the random number generator issued 92. So by my math, that means it's Guillaume. With 81. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Penny, for the interruption as well. That's great. Okay, so another lesson that I've learned from trip photography, and it took a joke from a friend, a very, well-meaning joke, but it was sort of hurtful at the time. He said to me, looking through the books, he said, well, your husband, should you ever decide to divorce, has excellent evidence to support that he should get full custody of the children, because from these books, it looks like you don't even go on vacation with them. Because I'm the one taking the pictures all of the time. So make plans to get yourself into some, if not many, of the photos. Nowadays, there are so many ways to use timers on your phone, a tripod, setting your camera down, using its timer, selfie stick. I still like to ask kind passersby to, or my tour guides or traveling companions to take my photos. I also have used the trick of, if you are on a tour group or have other people in your party outside of your immediate family, get people's email addresses, arrange to trade photographs through Dropbox or email or something, Flickr or some sort of sharing tool. Make it easier on yourself. Don't feel that you need to be shooting every minute, and you'll be amazed of the shots that are captured and how much you'll enjoy seeing those. And it might be that, who knows, if you've gone whale watching together and you didn't get that whale breaching, that maybe they did. Another way to get yourself into the photograph, even if it's a little bit more expensive and people sort of, question whether or not it's worth the money at all. I'm actually going to just share for a second, because I recently went to Chicago to see a girlfriend of mine that I met while in the UK, and she took me into Chicago to see the sights, and we went on the boat river tour. So I bought the touristy trap photo, and I gladly spent the money because it is one of my favorite pictures, even though we're all bundled up because it was very cold. It's one of my favorite pictures of the trip, and I have it here in my creative space, and it makes me smile every time I look at it. So buy the cheesy tourist trap photos, the professional photos that they'll have on cruises and things like that. It's a nice keepsake. Those are my souvenirs from the vacations. Whether it's an activity like, you'll see my Austria book that we went on a hill toboggan, and I mean, there's just no way that I could have ever gotten that shot, nor could any of my traveling party got that shot. They have the cameras set up in the appropriate places, like on roller coasters and that sort of thing, with the great expressions and your hair blowing in the wind and everything else. I mean, those are great for laughs and great mementos. So do indulge and get your, take advantage of those. Have a backup plan. Use those royalty-free, copyright-free online photos. I used to feel that there was sort of a stigma, or it was sort of cheating. I used to feel that it was sort of like scraplifting, something that, oh no, I can't do that, that's cheating. And now I gratefully scraplift and gratefully use royalty-free images that I can't get. Just because it's like, well, why would I try to break my neck trying to get this picture, or take a helicopter ride if I'm not interested in doing that, just to get that same sort of viewpoint if somebody's already done it and it's available for use. Buy the postcards. That being said, that postcards are great. Sometimes they have aerial views or views that you can't gain as the general public. So take advantage of these things. Include these in your scrapbooks. Backing up your photos daily is key. As I said, whether it's just that you're shooting with your phone and you use cloud backup, Space, Dropbox, that sort of thing, or if you're doing a sort of physically like I do to an external hard drive. Make sure that you give yourself that confidence that you're not going to lose the memories that you've tried to capture during your holiday. That being said, some people like to sort of delete as they go. I only call the photos that are absolute dead photos, like the ones you inadvertently take of your shoe, or the ones that are too dark or blown out, too bright, that you couldn't even salvage with Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, that sort of thing. Because I find that sometimes even the out of focus photos are the most fun, that they've captured something that, you know, a look on your child's face, or that spontaneous moment, like that wedding shot, Trish, that, you know, you don't want to throw that away. Wait until you're home, you'll gain some perspective, you'll see how you can use it, sort of thing. So before heading home, make sure you check your desired shot list. Make sure that if there are any more that you could get off, check off before your departure, go and do that. Ask for journaling input from your immediate traveling party while their memories are fresh too. So while you're journaling at night, you can ask people, what was your favorite part of today and why? And look for different perspectives. My favorite perspectives for trip photos, again, are shadows and reflections. We do a lot of shadow selfies. We do a lot of reflections and surfaces of buildings, puddles, and lakes. And that way, it's an extra way to get yourself into the photo. And a big theme for me is when I'm traveling, I try to capture things that are different from the way that they are at home. The places that I've traveled have their traffic lights in different orders, in different orientations, different physical spaces than they are at home. Road signs, how they look differently. Modes of transportation, cultures, markets and shops, how holidays are celebrated, different holidays that they might have over there that we don't have here. Different sort of daily routines and activities, and meal times and foods are huge topics that you can explore and have summary pages. And then finally, this is where I used to start in my trip scrapbook process once you've returned home. So the entire time that I've been talking is before you even get home. So this is your time to percolate and to process. So again, if you hadn't, while you were on your trip, ask your traveling companions which parts of the trip were their favorites and why. And do that before you select the photos that you are going to include in your albums, because it would be more to have photos of their favorite activities, even if they're not the best exposed or composed pictures, rather than immediately excluding them. Review your journaling with your companions while their memories are fresh. And then finalizing the scope and theme of your album. So how many pages do you want to have? How many photo spots? That will dictate your number of photos. What sort of color scheme are you going to have? Are you going to mind one way or the other? Are you going to do an entire album of restricted color sort of thing so that it's easier for you to scrap it and choose it? Or by section? You'll see in a minute that my Nova Scotia album I tried to do by section color, just to sort of give it some sort of cohesiveness throughout. Choosing your style, whether you want to do chronological or grouped by theme. I actually tend to do a mix of both. For trips, I'm mainly chronological, but there will be some pictures that I'll have to group, like my traffic signs ones. I will have pages of traffic signs or things that we saw along the way while driving the Cabot Trail, that sort of thing. Selecting your product. So are you going to keep it to a few kits? Are you going to limit it to a couple of designers? Myself, I'm pretty theme related, and I don't stick to limiting myself within a kit or within a series of kits. However, it really does make the process easier if you can look through your photographs and agree upon, you know, a few kits or a few designers, or even just a theme in general. It adds a lot to your reader's experience from cover to cover, and it will make it a lot easier for you to scrap, just because there will be less overwhelm. I don't know about you ladies, but my stash is pretty impressive, and I can spend days if not years, looking through things. So when I did this Nova Scotia album, I decided I wanted to keep with, sort of red, green, blue, and a bit of yellow, and then theme-based elements. And that helped me a lot to make sure that when I was creating the album, that I had less to choose from, and fewer decisions gets your pages scrapped more quickly. And then you can gather those online images if you're wanting to use those, your memorabilia, whether you're going to scan them or whether you're going to keep them in true form in pockets or whatnot, and doing some online research if you're required to fill in some journaling gaps. Myself, I like to now include a little bit from Wikipedia, and just sort of take a screenshot. Well, I guess I copy and paste it sort of into my journaling, and then give credit to Wikipedia as well. But I include that for some of the sites. If I don't have something really personal to say about it, I still want to include something about it. So I'll put that as a little bit. So looking at coherence and flow, you want to make sure it reads like a story. I think I've said all that. Excellent. So processing and selecting your photos. This is huge. This always takes me the longest time. Keep in mind that you don't need to edit and or include all of them. So basically, I'm looking to crop and size them. Being digital, I have the advantage that I can sort of resize on the go for my my creative canvas. And then sometimes I'll do a little bit of recoloring if needed. And again, trying to choose a mix of scene-based and detailed shots, thinking scope, large landscapes, medium actions, and small details. It tells a richer story. Try to choose a mix of aspect ratios and orientations. Don't make them all circles or all squares. Unless you're going for a pocket-based album, in which case that makes more sense and builds to your cohesiveness. Because I do a mainly 12 by 12 book, I like to sort of mix it up. Checking your other photos, those professional ones, those tourist trapped, your traveling companions photos, and your memorabilia like postcards, and searching for any copyright or royalty-free images, and organizing them into a timeline for yourself. Look to see if there are any maps that you want to include. And if you should decide to use any digital pictures from online, remember that because you're creating a printed product, you want to ensure that the pictures are at least 150 dpi for resolution to look decent as a printed product. The same actually has to be said to your traveling companions. There are a lot of programs and apps that will resize your images in order to make them more shareable. But if you get your images from them through one of these applications, it will look great on screen, but not necessarily in print. So if you could ask them to send them to you in original size, or to post to Flickr in original size, that's the version of the photo that you want. So creating the outline, I usually sketch an outline for my trip. I have a timeline. I have my photos. Personally, because I'm digital, I don't have sort of the piles, so I create virtual piles, if you will. I have a series of file folders and subfolders that go through each of my pages so I usually set out for, if it's a larger trip, 100 pages, and I'll go through and I'll pick my pictures for my front and back covers and my first page. And then I will sketch out the sections for days of my story. So I figure out how many pictures do I want per page? Will that page need a title? I choose my photos. I make sure I retain real estate for journaling if that page requires it. And then I'll choose my papers and embellishments last. So the other thing to note too is if you have two facing pages, like a double page layout, make sure that you're choosing papers, if not using the same products on both sides, that just give it a nice coherence and flow. Paper scrappers, I think, though, may wish to hold off to committing to any sketches until the entire album plans are complete, that you know exactly which photos you want to include. Again, being digital, I can sort of move things around a little bit easier. Whereas in order to have the physical space, I mean, you ladies might have crafting spaces that are larger than mine and have you and afford you the ability to lay things out and keep an ongoing project at your fingertips and move things around. I don't really have that space. I have that sort of in digital virtual space. And if you come across a photo and it's a one-off, or if it's not really adding to the story or fit in anywhere with any of the groupings, don't get rid of that photo entirely. It might be that that photo is better used to help tell a different story outside of that trip album. Maybe it's about how your child loves ice cream. Maybe it's a relationship between you and one of your travel partners, or habit, something that you do at home but you also ended up doing on the trip. Maybe it's a photograph that's better suited for your All About Me album, that sort of thing. So just remember that when you're looking through your photos, you're trying to tell the story of your trip, but don't get rid of any photos that can be used elsewhere as well. I really love photographs, if you can't tell, and I like to make sure that you always have availability at all times to tell a story about them later on. And then when you get down to the project itself, I found it much more productive to scrap how I'm feeling comfortable about it. I don't need to do it in order. It does help to have your outline sorted so that you do know what the order is and where certain pages should fall and where certain pictures should fall. But I ended up scrapping a bit of day 5 before day 2, and that was just fine. And it was just the way that the pictures were moving me. Again, when I do a trip, I do a bound album of 12 by 12s, so I don't give myself much latitude. But just like your other albums, you're welcome to do a mixed formats of pockets, 12 by 12, 6 by 8, whatever you'd like. You can scrap a layout at a time, a section at a time, however you want. You need to make sure that your project is your own and you're doing it the way you want and that it's bringing you joy. So I'm going to switch cameras here to, let's just see here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, this album is a trip to Nova Scotia, and it was a 7-day trip that just hubby and I took without the boys to our east coast. So Nova Scotia is in our Maritimes. So think sort of fishing boats and seafood and the like. Gorgeous scenery, very coastal. And what I did is, for my first page, I must admit, I didn't really have an idea because my second page was leaving on the airplane and I had a double page layout in mind. So I thought, well, what could I do to help introduce the trip? Because my title is really already on my cover. So what I ended up doing is I took, and I don't expect you to read the writing, it is very small on here, but just sort of the layout, what I did is our 7 stops in Nova Scotia, and these are the 7 places that we ended up visiting. So I took my favorite photo from each of the 7 spots, and I put them on the front page with just a little blurb saying where it was and what our favorite thing was that we did there. Oops. And then within certain regions of the trip, like Peggy's Cove, was one of the first places that we visited, and I kept to a color scheme of green, and throughout the series of pages within there, it just helps to keep it so that the person knows that I'm still sort of there. And then when we changed to a different place, I changed to different colors. Where is next one here? So this was a trip that had 1,022 pictures once I had gone through and culled the ones that I didn't want. So mainly, again, that was for 5 days worth of trip because I'm a crazy photographer. So I had just over 1,000 pictures that I needed, that I wanted to include. So I had worked out that I was going to work on this as a challenge for myself for layout a day this past February. So I had 28 days to scrap the album. So when January came around, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I worked out that I needed to take 4 blocks of 85 pictures per day for the 3 weeks of January in order to get those 1,022 pictures processed. So I worked away at it little by little. I had to put it into time on my calendar, that sort of thing. but that's the way I handled it. So that come February 1st, all my pictures were ready, and I'd already sort of reviewed what sort of products I wanted to include, what themes, that sort of thing. And then when load rolled around, I mean, load, the challenge is usually that you would do 1 layout a day. And I challenged myself to make 4 in order to have the album entirely done by the end of the month. And I did achieve it only because I did limit myself to colors, themes, kits. I had sort of a running list of my go-to products, my go-to kits, my go-to papers. And that really helped with my reader's experience too, to make the album look like it is one full trip. So this layout talks about signs and our experience of the quote-unquote lighthouse route that actually nowadays isn't filled with lighthouses anymore. Food pages. It seems like everybody takes pictures of their meals nowadays if they're pretty or whatnot. I'm not usually a food photographer, but this trip, the reason why hubby wanted to go out east is that he loves seafood. So I wanted to make sure that we did capture our food experience. And then I had him journal his experiences about, you know, what his favorites were, that sort of thing. This is one of those, what we saw along the Cabot Trail signage sort of pictures that are those one-offs that as you're in the car and you take it out the windscreen, sort of what you're viewing. And I sort of find these little ones sort of eye candy that I sort of jump around the page, and it's a little adventure in its own to see what you see, and just relive it. This is another one, and it's shots, sillily enough, I took pictures of our sat nav, of our GPS sort of thing, of our mapping program, to show the hairpin bends in the road, because it's something that I wouldn't have been able to do in yesteryear, that we didn't have things like this. So I wanted to capture, this is what it looks like to drive around the Cabot Trail. And you know, how rocky it is, and how many fishing boats you saw, although this was the only purple one I saw. So that's why I made sure that I included it in the album as well. And I included memorabilia I took pictures of some things and I scanned some things. So although being digital, my albums are flat, I do try to use textures and shadows and things to make them look more touchable, because my ideal scrapping style is to look as traditional as possible, but do it digitally, which might sound silly, but it is my goal. Scrap things that are unexpected. We actually came across a Doctor Who TARDIS when we were in Nova Scotia, and like, that is the weirdest thing on the face of the earth. For those of you who don't know what Doctor Who is, it's a sci-fi show that my middle guy is in love with. It's actually been around for a number of years, and the Doctor travels through time and space and has many interactions with monsters, humans, all sorts of creatures, and it's how he interacts with them. Time stories. So they actually had a TARDIS that you could go in and sign the guest book and things. So I needed to make sure that I told that story, because it was just something that I wouldn't have expected. Capturing the weather is a huge thing too. I mean, maybe it's completely different than home, and maybe it's not. But to just sort of keep a record of your weather while you're traveling. Some people like to do the apps that just take a screenshot of it and it captures it for you. I just want to show a few pages of this book. When we lived in France for those 3 years, we actually bought membership, like an annual pass, for Disneyland Paris. Now, Disneyland Paris is much smaller than Walt Disney World in Florida. And we had been to Walt Disney World in Florida before with 2 of our boys, but our youngest, being that he was born in France, he hadn't experienced that yet. But we had so many trips because we were annual pass holders for that period of time. And then for one trip, when we came back with friends from the UK, that I decided, rather than making a little mini album for all of those trips, I made a compendium of Disneyland Paris. So I put all of our trips together, and the way that I organized that, because it couldn't be chronological, because the number of trips spanned a number of years, is that I did it by land. So you have Fantasyland, Adventureland, that sort of thing. And what I did is I made a screenshot of the map of the land, and then it had the attractions sort of numbered on it already from the website. So I went around and I made sure that I had snapshots of all of those different places, or the places that were important to us, or attractions that were important to us. And because time and perspective of doing those trips throughout different months and different years, we really sort of not got into a routine per se, but we had our regular haunts, if you will. And this restaurant, called the Hyperion Cafe, really became an important part of our family trip to Disneyland Paris, because for anyone who has had or taken a child to Paris, Paris is more dog-friendly than child-friendly. And this restaurant had high chairs, and I was so excited to have a high chair that my baby didn't need to sit on my lap while we were eating, sort of thing, which sounds very silly, but I wanted to make sure I documented that. And another thing that I did is I did top 5 faves for these. So for each land, it would be the top 5 rides and the top 3 characters, or the top 3 attractions, whatnot. So for each land we went through, we would have those top 5s. And then I also contrasted, there are rides at Disneyland Paris that don't exist in Florida at all. Or there are rides at Disneyland Paris that exist in Florida, but that they're completely different. Like the flying carpets of Aladdin actually exist in both parks, but in Disneyland Paris, it's over in the Hollywood Studios part, and you can actually go up a ladder and view it from a different perspective, which is awesome, but it has a different story around it. Genie is directing you in a movie, and you're supposed to act while you're in the flying carpets. Whereas in Walt Disney World in Florida, you can only view the attraction from the ground, and it's in Adventureland. And then lastly is another 12 by 12 that we took the boys on a driving tour of some countries within Europe. We went to France, Germany, Austria, and then sort of back through those, and then through the Netherlands to home. We were living in the UK at the time. So for this trip, I went through and did by day, and I did it with a bigger title. So I did it by, day number 3, a summary of what we did. And usually when we went to a different city or a different country, I also included a map. And I must apologize, this book is done in glossy. Glossy is not usually a finish I usually will use, or I will never choose again, that's for sure. I much prefer a matte finish for my books. But so even though this book goes mainly chronologically, there will be one-off stories like the Umweltzone tag. And I think that was the most stressful journey thing we've ever experienced, because we needed to get it within certain business hours, and we were in the wrong country. And we came across the border into Germany, and we grabbed it within 10 minutes to spare. We went to 2 wrong places first, and it was horrible. We hadn't left ourselves enough lead time to get one by mail, and they wanted more money, and blah, blah, blah. So it's just telling that story that could have only happened on this vacation. Another story that only could have happened on this vacation, although it seems weird, this is my husband sewing up a trampoline. Well, at the farmhouse where we stayed in Austria, they had a trampoline for the children. And it was an older trampoline, and there was a small hole in it when we arrived. Well, our 3 boys bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce, and they used it so much, well, it ended up that the hole became bigger and bigger in the netting. So Hunter actually came through the hole at one point, and being the child that he is, he landed on his head, and everything was fine. But that Kyle ended up sewing up the trampoline just so that we could use it for the rest of the vacation, and because we had felt badly at the way that it happened. So, don't just capture, this is where we were, this is what we did. Make sure that you get those sort of one-off stories. Um, I had my kids take a lot of pictures of me on this trip with the other kids, and they found that quite interesting because usually mommy's camera, you know, we don't get to use that often, so it was nice for them. And on day number 7, it was sort of the development of the surprise when we went into Salzburg. I wanted to share this picture, that this is one of those examples of, it was a glass structure that was put up as a piece of art. Well, I looked at it and I saw the background and I said, this is how I'm going to get a family picture with me in it, sort of thing. Always be on the lookout for the opportunities to get yourself into the picture as well. Just going to... Was I not sharing any of that, girls? Did you not see any? Can you not see my screen right now? You're seeing my books. Okay, cool. Okay, good. Whew. Heart attack there for a second. Okay, so I'm going to switch cameras. There we go. I had hit switch camera rather than sharing it, and I couldn't see it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm yammering on it. They can't see anything. So another tip that I would say is spend the extra money if you're going to do an album and you have the opportunity to get lay flat binding. If you're doing a digital photo book or a digital scrapbook, lay flat binding is not one that I did for this Austria trip, but one that I did for the Nova Scotia trip. And it really makes a huge difference when you're doing double page layouts, so that you don't have that sort of gutter effect at all. Yeah, okay, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say. I just want to reiterate that I still have many, many trips to document. I've got a beautiful trip that I took with my husband to Italy that was a photography trip. So it was geared for like-minded individuals like myself who just, you know, wanted to take thousands and thousands of pictures of everything, and nobody was rushing me on and move on to the next thing, that sort of thing. I have sort of bigger events. I have our life in the UK. I have our life in France, and I'm going to be treating those sort of more like those trip albums, sort of documenting what things are different than we do at home, that sort of thing. So I'm in the process of sketching those out, and right now I'm working with Trello in order to track my stories and put in pictures that I want and that sort of thing, so that when I'm ready to sit down and scrap it, that it will be all ready and I won't feel as overwhelmed. Break down trips, scrapbooks into as small of blocks as you feel comfortable, because you want the process to be joyful. You don't want to get partway through or get to the end and never want to see the scrapbook again. The whole point of making a scrapbook of the trip is to have such lovely memories that you and your family are able to revisit and to relive together. So does anybody have any questions about my process or things that I tried, or anything that you'd like to ask? And then I've got to get off because, oh no, Jennifer's going to be on in an hour. Okay. So yes, I get lots of photos on my layouts. It's a struggle a lot of times, but it is, I love all of my photos, and I do take bad photos. You just don't ever see them. And the problem is, because I take thousands of photos, is that I have the availability of, I will only sort of keep the 1 out of 10 that's the good shot sort of thing. But I still have far more of even those. I love to include them. I will have, with the Nova Scotia album, there are some of those pages that have 22 pages on a double page spread. 22 is a lot of photos, and that sort of balances. I mean, then you have to sort of take the balance of, then your photos are going to be smaller if you're including that many on a spread, right? So I think the fact that I'm challenged by using a mix of photo sizes and orientations and shapes and everything like that, that I like that engages me. It keeps me going that way, and I don't see it as this mountain. I like having a mix of, there are some in that Nova Scotia book that only have three photos per pages versus the 11 per page sort of thing. And it's a balance. Do I want to have journaling? Do I not want to have journaling? That sort of thing. Make sure that you use your photos and your words to tell the story that you want to tell, not necessarily the story that somebody else will see with those photos. Okay, what printer company did I use? Okay, so because we were over in the UK, it's actually a company that's based out of the Netherlands. They're called Bonus Print. So all one word, bonusprint.uk. And they do lovely albums. I have never had an issue with sort of the longevity of the album. We look through these quite a bit. The quality of the printing is excellent. So for my 12 by 12s in my albums, I use persnickety, but right now I'm still using Bonus Print, even though I'm in Canada and it's a larger fee to get it delivered here. I still find that they're far worth the money. Another company that I've heard great things about is Adorama Pix, I think it is. Adorama Pix? Adorama? I'm gonna have to look that one up, but it's something like that. That they are more expensive, but they are based out of North America. So for people over here, that might be a better fit for you.
It is Adorama. That was right.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, there was one that had Pix, but I think that was one I used in France a long time ago. Thank you, Carrie. Any other questions?
No, one up a little farther that was asking if you use Lightroom.
Do you know what? I do not use Lightroom, but after doing the Nova Scotia album, I'm feeling that tug that I should make the move over. However, I use Photoshop Elements right now rather than Photoshop. So for me, and even listening to Brianne last night when she got asked the question, should someone switch from PSE to PS? That basically her feeling is that if you're going to go and you want to use Lightroom, that Photoshop would be the one to use. So for me, it's a monetary thing at the moment. I need to know that I can budget for that sort of suite now that they sort of offer it together as the photographer's bundle on a monthly basis. I'm very old-fashioned. I like to own my programs. I like to have the disc. I like to, you know, have my own version. That being said, I did upgrade to Photoshop Elements 2018 last year. So now that I've done that, I want to wait a little bit longer. So it might be that I don't do another trip album or something that has so many photographs that would be an advantage for me to use a cataloging system like that. In order to find my supplies, I did try using Photoshop Elements Organizer to sort of better help catalog and be able to search things better. Unfortunately, because my stash is so large and my photographs, my catalog is so huge, I crippled the system. So that isn't going to be a good fit for me. I do own AC/DC right now, and some people are still using that, so I might look into using that in the meantime. But I can definitely see where Lightroom would be a huge advantage for making that processing part a little bit less monotonous and less enjoyable sort of thing that it is right now.
Natalie? This was on Ray, and maybe I interrupted somebody.
No, you just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It's very eye-opening and inspiring. And I'm wondering if sometime in the future you do a presentation showing us how you use Trello as part of your planning process for your albums.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't mind at all. I know there are a number of members who have started using it on here. So I think it would be definitely a benefit for even, I think there are 3 of us that are currently using it for our main sort of story tracker, if you will. I can put a word out to Kim, because I know Kim was even looking into she got into it a little bit as well, and sort of put feelers out, because it would be really great. I find that I'm using it in a different way than the other ladies are using it, but again, there are no rules of scrapbooking, right? Whatever you're doing is the right thing for you. Whatever works for you is the way to be doing it. But I'd love to share things like that. Sure. Thank you for the suggestion, Anna. Right?
Well, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
When you make your pages,
Yeah.
you do them in a separate program and then move them to the to the photo book company, or what?
Okay, so how I started out, when I was making the gift albums for the grandparents, they were more of this sort of format, so different aspect ratio. And Bonus Print has excellent software that you can start anything from a blank canvas to drag and drop templates, and they have a variety of them. It's really evolved over time. It used to be that you couldn't, like Creative Memory software, when I first started with them, you couldn't resize text, and there were only a certain number of fonts, and that you couldn't resize your pictures, and you couldn't shadow anything, and it was very different looking than it is today. So yes, so for these ones, with a different aspect ratio, I would start from a blank canvas, and I would scrap right inside of here that all of my stash could be imported into their software. So you could start from a blank canvas and go, or use their drag and drop templates. Nowadays, with my bound albums, I scrap in Photoshop Elements, and then I just drag and drop my 12 by 12 finished JPEG over into their blank page of 12 by 12.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do it either way. There's lots of flexibility.
Yeah, because there is a company here in Denmark that makes photo books, but I'm not sure if what they actually have, all the functionality, all the embellishments and stuff like that. How much?
Okay, well, sometimes the companies offer up 2 different versions. That they have a sort of work at your own pace online version, and then there's a version that you would download onto your own system, and it's usually the latter version that gives you the most flexibility. Okay. So you could download, and normally the software is free. It just takes up space on your system. So you could give them a try. I mean, Bonus Print actually, it was funny because I noticed that they were the same before they ever admitted to it. Bonus Print was a sister company with Albelly. And Albelly was a little bit higher tiered sort of program, expensive, like cost-wise, but then they bought them out. So now there's only Bonus Print anymore. But it was interesting that when I was like, oh, I'll try Albelly. And then I downloaded their software, and I was like, this is the same software. And I realized that the file extension of their programs was .alb. Well, lo and behold, if I started to build my project within Albelly software, but then Bonus Print had a sale on, I could just move it over and upload it into Bonus Print software, and it came out just perfect. So it was wonderful. So yeah, I mean, companies have come a long way of what they offer up as far as embellishments and templates and ways to customize, how customizable it is. So my best advice would be attack of the paper. Hi, Kitty.
Someone was making a nuisance of themselves.
That very much give it a try, play around with it. I mean, I almost cringe at the albums that I first made with like the Creative Memory software or Bonus Print before they figured out how to do a realistic shadow for different things like a puffy flower as opposed to a thin piece of paper. So you can see that my albums have evolved along with my knowledge of how to use the different tools over time. Yeah.
Right, so just experiment.
Experiment, play. Anything else?
Are you able to be cloned? You just send a lot of little Natalies to all of our houses, and you can kind of sit on our shoulders.
You're so sweet. No, I'm very happy to share whatever. I mean, please do message me within the membership if you ever have any questions. Or I am very much in that membership. I have grown so much, and I feel I can be so vulnerable and real with you ladies and share things. And there aren't any stupid questions. I've asked some doozies so far, and no one's, you know, called me on them or anything. We're all here within the membership to share, to advise, to inspire, to support. And I mean, I don't know really the last 6 months what I would have done without the members. That really mood lifters when you need it, inspiration when you feel stuck. It's been fantastic. So thank you all for joining me today for these 2 classes that ran way over time. But I've really enjoyed sharing, and I've enjoyed sharing time with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, goodbye, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of the party. I think it's Jennifer that's next up. Let me just check. Yes, how to get more you in your scrapbooks. And that's in an hour's time. So I might take a little break, but I might join you guys back on here. So best wishes to everybody. Create how you want to create and how your heart tells you to, and enjoy this wonderful hobby we share.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, guys. Again, it will kick you out momentarily, but then feel free to come back in and crop, okay?
Okay, thank you.